All right, let's get across those headlines now. National Editor of The Australian, Dennis Shanahan. Well, welcome, Dennis. That latest Resolve poll shows the coalition pulling significantly ahead of Labor for the first time since the election. Labor continuing that downward trend. The coalition in primary vote terms too in today's news poll. It's doing well, support flatlining in two-party preferred terms. This is despite all of those so-called wins for Labor, the tax cuts, the supermarket inquiries, the workplace relations reforms, all of those supposed to turn the tide for them. Now, topping it all off, I think here, perception's everything. The Prime Minister was spotted in the crowd at Taylor Swift on Friday night. He then got on his jet, came down to Melbourne for the dinner with the billionaire Anthony Pratt and that private show by singer Katy Perry. Now, perception is reality, as I said. I don't begrudge a PM to go to that industry grocery event with Pratt. He certainly doesn't control who the billionaire invites along to sing. But I tell you what, I'm assuming it's a freebie. He didn't have to take the tickets to Taylor Swift. That wasn't an industry dinner. And all of this sort of adds up in the minds of families doing it tough, doesn't it?
Well, the Prime Minister is constantly trying to appeal to the younger voters. That's one of his keys. He wants to hold on to younger voters. And so he constantly talks about being DJ Albo. He goes on FM radio, does very soft interviews. He talks about Toto, I should say, and TayTay. So he constantly tries to appeal to the younger voters. But I think that there is a juxtaposition here which is awkward. I think that when he's campaigning in Frankston for the Dunkley by-election and talking about the cost of living and trying to help people and realising inflation is so bad, that housing is such a crisis, and yet there he is seen, dancing at the Taylor Swift concert. Look, he's entitled a bit of a go and a bit of a holiday, but Scott Morrison was entitled a bit of a holiday as well. But he paid for that, and Anthony Albanese has paid for a lot of his overseas travel, even that which wasn't on holiday. So I think there's a real image problem with the Prime Minister, and he invites forensic analysis every time he puts some of this personal life out there.
Look, Scott Morrison was at TayTay too. Of course, he's not Prime Minister anymore, but he's got young daughters. The South Australian Premier Malinowskis, he was there as well. I saw some social media. Again, he's got young daughters. But I think the Prime Minister there with an adult son, most people would be thinking, not good on you, you're at a TayTay concert, but, my kids couldn't get tickets. We know everybody wanted to go. Lots of young people missed out. I think that was a dumb move, almost rubbing their noses in it, but we'll see what happens in Dunkley this weekend. It's a 6% margin. I remind people of this. It's not a normal by-election either because, of course, a very popular Labor MP died in office. There'll be some level of sympathy vote for her, although she did pass away, sadly, in December. But what I felt was interesting, and I picked this up today, Dennis, there is no one nation or Palmer candidate this time round. There was in 2022, there's not now. So you'd hope then that Liberal vote that tends to slide off to the others on the right side of politics might come back to the Liberal Party. I'll look for that on Saturday night. But I was down in the seat on Friday. It is Mortgage Belt Central. I mean, I think it's still Labor's to lose, but I suspect they're pretty nervous in the PMO as well. What do you think, Dennis?
Well, I think that essentially all the polls are showing, news poll, Freshwater, they're all showing that the tax cuts, which were deliberately introduced before the Dunkley by-election, have just been swallowed whole and haven't touched the sides. There's been no bump for the tax cuts, and I'm told by people on the ground in Dunkley that the cost of living, particularly electricity prices, are far more important than the potential for tax cuts 3 months down the track, which people were already expecting. I think that there's been a bit of a miscalculation on the impact of the tax cuts in Dunkley. I think it will be very close. And I think in the end, it's highly unlikely that Anthony Albanese will lose the seat of Dunkley. It's a 6.3% margin. If he does, then it's good night, Irene. It'll be real trouble for Labor. But it'll be about the rate of the swing. And Anthony Albanese has been talking about, the standard swing for governments at a by-election is 7%. Well, that's actually a very selective figure. That's not what it's been overall. And what he's trying to do is fit a narrative where if he can hold the seat, he can claim, oh, that's better than average. I've done better than average. I've held on to the seat. But if there is a swing, 4 or 5%, then there is going to be nervousness in Labor ranks, and all of the spin about the size of the swing isn't going to cut it with Labor-backed benches who will be facing a federal election perhaps on smaller margins than there are in Dunkley. This is a real test for Anthony Albanese, and I don't think it's going well. Certainly all the polls are saying the tax cuts are not making a difference.
It's interesting today, there was some stuff around about wages growth, and wages growth, of course, being now the biggest driver of CPI, of inflation. This undercuts some of the claims from unions and others out there, the Greens in particular, that it was the big corporate price gouging in the supermarkets that was driving the price rises. But in that data, it mentions that average full-time wages now are above $100,000. I might just add there, just on the point of Dunkley, they're low $40,000 average incomes in Dunkley. That shows you how far Dunkley is away, that the national average is there of over 100K. But of course, if people are earning on average over $100,000, this is where bracket creep really bites for them. And the Prime Minister's $15 a week stage 3 tax cuts windfall, they're not going to see that till the 1st of July. That's just a drop in the ocean.
Yes, well, parts of Dunkley, of course, are real tiger territory for the Liberals, and they will be trying to push the whole idea of bracket creep. But interestingly, in Parliament today, what they did press was immigration. And I think that immigration is becoming a symbol. Jim Chalmers accused them of dog whistling on immigration for the Dunkley by-election. But immigration has become a symbol for people who feel squeezed. They feel squeezed by cost of living. They feel certainly in Dunkley squeezed by the cost of housing, by mortgage rates and by inflation, and they don't feel that the wage rises are yet getting through. And so I think that there's a real problem there for Labor amongst those people who, they're not high income earners at all, but they're slightly higher income earners than the rest of Dunkley.
Yeah, well, as I said, I was down there on Friday. I will watch it closely this week. Thanks as always, Dennis. Great to have your company.